Yeah, great. Okay. We are ready to go, TV 79. So I'd like to call this meeting of the Operations Planning Committee for Thursday, October 14th to order. First order of business will be to approve our minutes of September 9th.
So moved.
Thank you very much, Seth.
I will second.
Seconded by Duke. Everybody have a chance to look through them? If so-
They look fine.
Okay, all those in favor of approval, please.
I'm allowed to abstain, right? I wasn't there.
You are. First of all, are there any corrections or additions to the minutes?
I see none.
Okay, great.
But
Then all those in
you
favor.
can vote.
Okay.
Please say aye.
Aye. I'm in there.
Opposed, abstentions, Steve abstains, motion carries. Okay, thank you very much. We'll get right to it then. Chairman Deneen.
Morning. Good beer and a beautiful fall morning. I have a couple of updates, but I'll cut right to the chase on a lot of discussions that have been going on, not just from a Board of Ed perspective, but also from a community perspective. And I will extend a thank you to First Selectman Jamie Stevenson, who I've been in constant contact with about, as a community, you know, how do we move forward with some of the challenges that we've experienced at the high school, you know, on social media and around, you know, just kind of the current election season. So, you know, the good news is people are listening and paying attention, and I think if anyone saw the Board of Ed meeting on Tuesday night, people are coming, people are giving their thoughts and their feedback. And, you know, I think the biggest thing I can say is we're listening. I think we're all listening at this table. And I will kind of echo, I think, what Terry and Jamie did this week, and kindness matters. And I think if we all agree it's our community and we're all stakeholders, we're all living here for a reason, whether it's, you know, be with our families that have grown up here, the education system, the commuting to New York, it's all good. But we've got to do this together as one community and one voice. And we will get there. We have some challenges. I've spent a lot of time with Dr. Adley. Jamie and I have spoken too about resources that we need to look to help us kind of navigate through this at a district level from a school standpoint, and then from a community standpoint in terms of leadership. Jamie invited Alan and I on a great call with an organization out of Westchester, the
American Jewish Committee,
and we had a great call with them. I reached out to some resources that I know from a business perspective. Alan has reached out to some resources he knows, and consulting firms and other firms that will help us look at kind of how we move this forward. From a school standpoint, you know, we've had a couple of meetings, and there's even been some videos that have been used and discussions at the school level at the high school to kind of continue to re-educate and talk about this. I think the key is we have to talk about it. We have to hear the students' voices, which we did so eloquently the other night at the Board of Ed meeting. We had, I think, 4 students speak and 1 recent alumni, and I think they spoke eloquently about how they feel and what they feel needs to happen. So we're gonna continue to listen, but it's also time to move into the action phase even more. So I look forward to continuing to work with everyone on this table. I know, Jamie, your dedication to this town and all that you've done over the last 10 years, I know you'll continue to stay involved. And I appreciate that, because your help and guidance has been extraordinary in terms of just our regular conversations. And Terry, thank you also for all your support and all that you do from a Hartford standpoint. You know, the thing I stressed the other night is this has gone beyond our borders, which is fine. I sit on a chain of communication with other board chairs, and you know, people are listening and seeing. So we have to also think about how we react. I'll say it, how we behave, and how we move forward. So I'm confident we will do that. We've got the right leadership in place at the schools. We've got the right leadership on the board. Some of that may change once we get through election, but we still got good people interested in participating. But we will move forward. But I think there's some hard questions we have to ask, and I think we have to look at, if you think, I've spoken to some college students, and they don't spend hours or even days. In some of these schools, they spend a week before you even start school talking about social justice, talking about drugs, alcohol, talking about religion, talking about, you know, all that type of stuff. And, you know, it's a real educational focus on how you behave, how you are a digital citizen, how you are a citizen on social media. So I think we have to get to that point. I think our kids should be more prepared, even when they go to college, and spend close to a week, and some of the students I've talked to, just on that focus. And also, there is no tolerance really for it at schools. You're removed or asked to leave the school. So I think you also have to look at, you know, how do we get these students to learn and understand? Punishment is tough. We want to continue to educate and keep our arms around these kids, but, you know, at some point too, they have to understand the consequences of their actions. And I think that only helps them as they go on to college and on into the real business world. So a lot of work to do, but again, I appreciate all the help and the support. We'll do it together as a community.
Absolutely, we must have that
Good.
as a community.
Good. I'll pause there for a minute if there's any questions around kind of that and that conversation that's been going on.
I would like to offer some comments, just because, and thank you for bringing it up. It really is the issue of the moment for our town. So I won't go into my whole report, but what I want to share is that, thank you for mentioning our conversation with the American Jewish Committee, really polished organization who seems truly committed to being there to support us if we want their help to work through those difficult conversations about how to address issues of intolerance. That's only one small issue that we've been facing. It's intolerance of many different things. Some of it's in the schools. Much of it lately has been in the ether, if you will, in social media. There is an initiative. I'm intrigued by this new initiative. The Board of Selectmen is going to receive a presentation from a wonderful new campaign called Darian United. Many of you might have heard about it. And according to its founder, Nobu Miki, we all know Nobu for her phenomenal artistic capabilities. Darian United is a grassroots initiative made up of Darien residents and local leaders who commit to creating and supporting a welcoming community that respects and encourages contributions of people of all races, ethnicities, ancestry, national origin, class, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, language, mental and physical ability, military status, and immigration status. I'm going to specifically ask them to include political affiliation in that definition, because, you know, that's a top line issue right now here in Darien. Members of this organization commit to upholding these values within our community and organizations and businesses as both aspirational and operational guideposts in our everyday practices and priorities. Organizations like the YWCA, the YMCA, and the Darien Library have already signed on to be partners. And I think there may be room for the town of Darien to be an active partner in this initiative. So we'll receive a presentation from them at an upcoming Board of Selectmen meeting. The time is right for the movement of this kind here in Darien. It's been brewing for quite some time, and I think the pot has boiled over. The political campaign season this year has brought to Darien the negativity we typically see with national campaigns. And I'm not sure why that is. It's so easy to take to a keyboard and vilify people for political gain or with whom you disagree. It's our job as adults in the community. I'm going to sound a little bit like a mom here, but please indulge me. It's my last OPC meeting.
It is?
It is.
Nobody told me that.
Yeah. Where you been?
I've been here since Susan Cameron days.
So it's our job as adults in our community to be positive role models for our kids. I think we're going to hear about that in the Thriving Youth rollout of the asset survey. So I'm going to be keenly interested to see where we fall in that regard. Role models even for those kids who are not our own. So post and tweet like your kids are watching you.
Mhm.
They're learning from you. They see
Mhm.
what you post. They see when you're maliciously maligning, members of your own community. And Duke, you guys have a difficult issue. Kids are kids, and I am a huge believer in sometimes kids don't actually understand what they're doing when they express themselves in negative ways. But it will be an impossible task for our community to overcome that in our schools if we as adults and parents don't role model appropriate behaviors on social media. And I work every day to make Darian the best it can be. And the click of a keyboard, the damage that's done to our community as a whole is very, very difficult to overcome. We're welcoming new businesses here. Families are moving here like in a pace that we've never seen before. So for anybody who's doing research about the town of Darien, you go online, you do a search, what are you going to find right now? You're going to find these headline stories that, in my opinion, bear no resemblance to the town of Darien that I know and love. And it's all of our collective responsibilities and everyone who's watching and listening to make sure that we take good care of this community and we make sure that we uphold the values that we have. I know that the Board of Selectmen started an initiative for a community value statement. That issue stalled at some point in the past due to it was before your tenure. I'm going to strongly urge the next Board of Selectmen to take up that issue again. It's imperative that we come together as a community, not just as a school, and I appreciate that you have your strategic plan with the value statement in it. It has to be something that we all embrace. So even when I'm out of office, I will continue on this issue because we're all here for a reason. We love this town. And it's our responsibility to make sure that we make it the best it can be and respect and love one another, and kindness does matter. So, sorry for all that, but
Well
super
said.
important to get out there.
Very well said.
Yes, very well said, thank you,
Right.
Jeannie.
Does anybody else want to talk to this very important community issue?
Yes. It's gonna take a minute to formulate what I'd like to say though.
Terry, I brought a statement, if you wanted to maybe read it into the record.
Sure. I mean, what you said was so valuable. Adults need to model for themselves, for their families, for their kids, for everyone in the community appropriate behavior, and we've seen that has not happened. And it's, to your point, it's what I'm hearing from a number of people is they love living here. They feel embraced. And these are people of all colors and all races and all political affiliations. They don't see the darkness that some people see in our town. And I think that baffles us, and I look forward to learning more why some in our town feel disenfranchised the way they do, and sometimes act in a way that's counterproductive to community values. Jamie and I wrote this community statement together, and we have sent it to all the media outlets, and we did post it on social media yesterday. This is to the Darien community. Our community has been through a great deal these past weeks. Whether at Darien High School or in political campaigns, people are hurting and being hurt by insensitive words and actions of a few. Tolerance is in short supply, likely fueled by the stress and anxiety we've all experienced over the past year and a half. While recent events suggest we are a community with challenges, we know we were better than this. We must rise up, come together, and overcome by recommitting ourselves to the values that are foundational to a healthy community: civility, respect, honesty, and trust. We are family, friends, neighbors, and colleagues with so much more in common that separates us. And I think that's such a key point. Our individual actions and reactions create the social fabric of our community. It is our collective responsibility to right the wrongs, take the high road, and to say we are sorry when we need to. Look for the good in one another and the positivity of our differences. Agree to disagree respectfully. Forgive. Celebrate what's good. Choose love over hate every time. Kindness matters always.
John?
I guess I add briefly as someone who's been on the receiving end of some of this. My first inclination was revenge, right? Get back at them, right? Step it up. And teeing off sort of what you said in that statement, it's actually pretty important that folks who do this when some type of retribution matters, that needs to be done through an official channel, like schools with students who are out of line or violating school rules. I'm completely fine with that. But one of the ways that you step up from this and try to create that environment of kindness and respect is be very careful about reciprocating these actions.
Correct.
Right? You need to stand up and say, look, as a candidate for office, this type of nonsense goes on. I'm not going to engage in that, and not me, but just anyone who's a candidate or in the political sphere or is a victim of this sort of thing. The best thing I think you can do is allow official channels to work when there's wrongdoing, but as a candidate or someone who's subjecting themselves to this environment, you need to take a step back and say this is part of the process, and that the way I sort of promote the kindness that I think you articulated well in that statement is by modeling it, right? And sometimes that requires you to stand down, let the process play out, and then say that my contribution to that is the example I'm trying to set. So I think you're quite right to have articulated it the way you did.
Well said.
Seth?
So you and Terry wrote this?
Correct.
Okay. And then where are you going with it? What is it? To get it out in the record? Is it something you're releasing to the newspapers? Is it?
We did. Unfortunately, the news media has not published it to date, so we put it on our own personal social media channels yesterday. I wanted to make sure that we read it into the record today for public airing. I think it's an important message. We shared it with Duke and Dr. Adley.
Well, because as I was listening to it, I was thinking I have a place in the RTM meeting called announcements. And I think it would not be out of line to read that statement in the RTM meeting on Monday night.
Okay.
Here,
That's
could you-
good.
The only thing is, it cut off that Representative Terry Wood on the bottom of that. If you could add that, John, you can have this copy. So
Yeah, that's a
we would
good
be-
point. I'll read it to the Board of Finance
we'd
next
be
week.
very grateful for you to share that with the RTM. Thank you.
I could use that with P and Z too.
We'll send it to everybody.
Yeah, thank
Something
you.
came up the other night.
Actually, you might have gotten it. Did you send it to these?
Yes.
Oh, I got it,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got it.
yeah.
Okay, I could have it, yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
Perfect.
I got it.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
She
So-
says, send it to the library too. We didn't send it to Kira. I will send it to Kira.
That's a good idea.
Yep.
Thank you, Duke. Thank you for starting that important
Yeah,
conversation.
no,
Yes.
thanks. Good conversation around the table. Just, real quickly, we are still under a mask mandate. We are till February, and we will continue to follow that. That was not a topic of conversation on Tuesday night, but I know it is something that parents especially think about every day, and students think about every day too. So we'll continue to monitor that and do our best. I think the goal is there's nothing like having choice to be able to do that, but as we see the variance and the statistics around it and more news on the vaccine front, I think at the state level they'll continue to monitor that, and we'll see where that goes, but we're under a mask mandate. Current cases at the school are 4. Total quarantines are 11. I think our overall quarantine philosophy is working much better, and the availability of testing is also helping in that whole classes are not quarantining. There is a challenge, as you can imagine, sometimes at the elementary school level where they're not able to be vaccinated, but with some of the social distancing that we're doing, it is helped when we do contact tracing. In rare instances, we've had to quarantine a whole class, so I think we're in a good place there. Real quickly, the other night we went over some of the federal grants that we're getting. There are 4, a little tick up in the dollars to those grants, which is nice. If you want more information, I can get it out to you and post it. It's Title 1, 2, 3, and 4 for fiscal year 2022.
So we may have to be involved in that, right, to accept the grants?
No.
No?
No,
Okay.
not at all. No, they were accepted and by the board as to, these are normal annual grants.
Oh, they're
Specific
part of
to
the budget, all right.
school. Yeah, not part of the budget cycle or not any of the SR2 type grants that come. We also went over the initial proposed budget calendar. And I think I'm recommending we spend some time with the Board of Finance and with Jack Davis and Clara to talk about kind of the budget dates and the cycle and making sure people get stuff on time with enough time to review, and that we have enough time to have the meetings we want to get the feedback and answer the questions. So we may make some adjustments to this. We got kind of caught up last year in a tight timeline, and one meeting where we were going to move forward, some additional cuts were proposed, and we worked through that. So we're going to spend some time with our other partners to look at the kind of the budget process.
I think the collaboration that's gone on between the committees and yourselves has been outstanding.
Great, thank you, sir.
And it shows.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We're actually, for anyone that has nothing to do on a Thursday night, Dr. Adley and I will be with Jack Davis and his committee this evening, talking about where we are from an existing budget and where we ended the year. So we're spending some time with them this evening. The other thing that we're moving through that I know has been a big topic of conversation, and I think this is really important, and I think it's exciting, because I think, again, it's how we're all going to work together. We've approved a curriculum committee. We have not organized the curriculum committee. I think we have to wait until we get through elections and see the makeup of the board. But Mr. Tranberg and Dr. Adley have started organizing a calendar of what curriculum is going to look like and how we're going to present that to the community. We'll start to look at what the roles and the responsibilities are of the curriculum committee, which will be a subcommittee of the board, and it will be, board members will be on it. At the district level, they'll still be doing their committee work also. I think one of the things I talked to Dr. Adley about, and Alan too, sometimes it's good to go back and maybe we need to recap what we have in terms of curriculum, kind of like an inventory of what's really we do on a regular basis, and then where we have flexibility and where we develop some of the own curriculum ourselves that enhances our overall education system. So that continues to be a good work in progress. I think that's about it from my end. The other thing that we did kick off last week is the DEA, the Darian Education Association, has asked to impact bargain. We had our first meeting with the DEA last week for a couple of hours. Good conversation, again, very COVID safety and protocol specific, and it was agreed we did not start the clock ticking on that. There's a 25-day negotiation window, then there's a 25-day mediation window, and then you go to arbitration. So
What was that again? I'm sorry, I missed that.
we missed-
What you're negotiating?
What impact bargain, you explain what they've asked?
Yeah, thank you. So as part of the union and their contract, they have the ability during the course of any year to impact bargain around working conditions.
Working
Over and
conditions,
above
okay,
what's
okay.
set in their existing contract. We did it last year. Most districts did it last year, and it turned out to be what was referred to as a memo of understanding. Most of it was a couple of pages, and it was around safety protocols and working conditions and different things like that.
Got it.
So we'll work through that. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 19th with the union and their representative. Yes?
Question, any sports teams or any clubs, any bands affected by any COVID quarantining or issues?
No.
So they're all doing great, Bones supposed to do.
Everyone's doing great. We had a full, last Thursday, thanks for bringing that up. Last week we had a full choir recital and music recital up at the high school, which was awesome. I attended I saw Jamie there the first Friday night lights game several
Really?
weeks ago,
Was that
which
good?
was awesome. Just great. It was a packed house, and it was packed with students. It was packed with our community members. It was packed with the opposing team. It was Newtown. A lot of those folks came down. It was great. I will say this weekend is homecoming. There is a 1:30 game up at the stadium this weekend also, so I'm sure we'll be packed. And just one other update, which is important because we have the support of the Board of Finance. We're in the process of finishing up the latest upgrade to the security system that we discussed over the course of the summer. All the schools are safe and secure. All systems are operating, but we will be moving over and training on the new school system. And then just a quick update, we have a meeting shortly after this on Ox Ridge. Ox Ridge continues to move along. Incredible work by that whole committee. We are about a month behind schedule due to insulation from a roofing standpoint, and I consider ourselves incredibly lucky to be a month behind when you think of product and material and shipping and delivery. So the one decision that was made and brought up to the board and everyone's in agreement, we will not be doing an April move into that school. We will be doing a summer move after school closes next summer, and I think that makes sense. We're actually ordering furniture, fixtures, materials, and everything for an April move, just to try and get ahead of it. I was just at a meeting early this morning on interior, color design, furniture, and all that fun stuff, and we feel we're in pretty good shape there in terms of product availability and getting it in time. So the good news is I think we're ahead of the curve. So from an overall project standpoint, we are on schedule and we are under budget. It's a good story. It really is. And then this afternoon at 4 o'clock, Dr. Adley and I have a meeting with Sarah Newman to kind of keep moving forward on the building committee for the renovation of the next 3 schools. So we have a meeting at 4 o'clock this afternoon.
And that building committee's been formed, is that?
In the process of
It's
being
in the
formed.
process.
Yeah.
So
We've approved it.
Yes,
Yes.
thank you.
Yeah.
Seth.
Cross that one off.
P&Z early in on that, right?
Yes.
Planning department.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. So thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Great, thanks. We'll go on to John.
Morning, everybody. A few things on our agenda for this coming week. So we are going to go ahead and put in place the resolution for the fire truck bonding. So as everyone will recall, this was to replace a ladder truck. The cost is in the zip code of $1.3 million. And I don't believe the bidding process has started on that, or has it
It has
started?
not.
Has not started just yet.
It should be out soon.
Yeah, exactly, that's my understanding, so what we want to do is to try to get that bonding in place now, and then Seth and I have been in communication about that. It'll go to the RTM next, so that's all teed up for when that project starts. At our meeting next Tuesday, we're going to have a review of the town and police pensions, and that's going to be less around the pensions themselves, but more around the assets that support those pensions. As everyone will recall, there's a kind of joint boards that meet. It's the town and the police pension board, and they're responsible for the investments and actuarial assumptions that underpin our contributions to those pensions. And currently the investment of those funds is outsourced to a group called Boston Partners. And so we're going to have just a complete overview and update on all of that, both investment performance, total assets, level of funding, as well as all their actuarial assumptions, and just kind of get a sense of that. Paul Hendrickson is the Board of Finance rep on those 2 boards, as I was before, and he updates us periodically, but I thought it would be better to have a more complete update to the board, so we're going to go through that next week, and I'm looking forward to it. I thought the Board of Selectmen session following these recent floods the other day was terrific. So having Craig and Jeremy and Ed present their perspectives on all that as professionals with long-time exposure to those problems was much needed, and likely merely the start of that kind of conversation and analysis. And so I just wanted to applaud the Board of Selectmen for setting that up. It was very well received among everyone that I spoke to afterwards, including folks who had had a lot of the flooding damage. I think it was mentioned at the last meeting when I wasn't here that it would be interesting to get kind of a sense of the costs of flooding that were borne by the town, not necessarily the businesses or residents, but just getting a sense for what, as a town, we're having to pay to remediate some of that, both in terms of an operating cost as well as capital improvements. Some of that has already come forward in terms of truck replacement and a few other assets that were lost as part of that, but I think having an accounting of that and to be able to provide to the public would be a good thing. I'd be interested in where we are on the ARPA committee and all of that. I guess you'll address that in your remarks, so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then next week, we will touch briefly on the budget process. It seems kind of early, but making sure that we're teed up and ready to go to be at the table when the other boards come up with their budgets. I think the thing that's helped the process lately is that sort of early exposure or exposure as it's being decided, as opposed to waiting and not being part of that and trying to weigh in to come in later. And so the more of that, the Board of Finance and frankly the F&B with the RTM can do, then the more efficient the process is, because they've kind of heard everything to date, and then any work they do is incremental rather than redundant. So we'll do more of that. Finally, Dan Baumgartner on our committee is sort of the Board of Finance rep on the Oxford Building Committee. He updates us sort of periodically with kind of what's going on, but I'm glad to hear it's under budget. It might actually be worthwhile to have just a more complete financial update on that, especially puts and takes versus the original budget,
Sure.
right? So you're here with the change orders that actually led to it being under budget, that sort of thing, just we have a sense of what that is. And certainly I look forward, so I'm assuming that if there's a month delay, that there might be incremental costs associated with that, but just sort of the crystal ball sense of all that. So I'll get that organized in the next meeting, and in a future meeting, maybe we can have that update. So
I will tell you that Rusty, Kip, and I, we literally went through, had a meeting, sat down, and went through every change order.
And aren't those two guys amazing, Rusty and Kip?
Yes.
I have to say,
They really
Yes.
are.
they are
And
saints with this
Nick
stuff.
Rongo was
Oh,
part
Nick,
of that
that's right.
process.
I mean,
and
everybody on that
this
committee is
his
amazing,
world, so.
but my God, it's just been,
Yeah.
what a difference.
And year after year, I mean,
Yeah.
decades for both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that dates them a little bit, but we're
Yeah.
appreciative.
That's okay.
The decades
That's
are
okay.
Nick's not that
tremendous,
old.
But it just gets back to this formation of these building committees,
Oh, 23.
Jamie's idea to do that. If you get it staffed with the people who are both experienced but energetic and want to contribute in that way, it's just made a world of difference on all the projects that have had that, so I'm
So
amazed.
the interesting thing is, and when you go back to whether it's AP, O&G, or SLAM, who have been great partners, and happened on, kind of talking about bills and change orders, and then at this morning's meeting, the feedback from them is, wow, you guys are really involved.
That's good.
Yes, and it's been a benefit to them. They're like, so many things oh my God, and you don't want like a month or two later for the town saying, oh, by the way, whereas we've just been involved every step of the way.
Well, and
I think it's
also-
worked, it's proved valuable.
Yeah, it also sets a tone with those folks. which
Yes.
is, my God, don't show up unprepared,
Yeah.
or don't
Yeah.
let them be surprised by something.
Yeah.
And it's just a great process without being intrusive or bureaucratic, which is,
Yeah.
it's just right. So
Yeah.
that's it for me.
Okay, thank you so much. Seth?
Well, the RTM continues to just go day to day. We put one foot in front of the other and try to keep moving. We're still meeting remotely. It's one thing when you got 14 people meeting under the current rules, but when you try to put 100 together and meet face to face, it gets a lot trickier, as Mrs. Bush would be more than welcome to testify. So, but I think that the rules have gotten to the point now where we can do face to face. So I am aiming, the Rules Committee has to agree, I don't know whether they will or not, but I am aiming to have our November 9 meeting face to face for the representative town meeting. I think we're at a point where we can do that, our November 8 meeting, it's the annual meeting. That's when all the newly elected folks get sworn in. It's when the district chairs are nominated and elected. It's when the members of the Rules Committee are elected, and we split into 6 groups, one for each district. And trying to do that remotely, I just think it makes a lot of sense now that we're at that point with COVID that we do it, we try and do it face to face.
And the heavy vaccination rates for our town.
Yes,
High vaccination rates.
our record is very, very good. As far as the business of the RTM, we took care of Crimmins Road, the purchase of that, the building committees, and the storm damage to the Board of Ed equipment. Hopefully we find another piece of high ground somewhere. The flooding issue has been a flooding issue since I was on the Board of Selectmen. We did a study of the town and found there were 3 basic areas that controlled the flooding. One's in Norotan Heights, and as we know from the last go-around, it hasn't changed a lot.
No, I would argue that, blue in the
Yeah.
face. There's a 1.2 million gallon tank under the parking lot.
And it overflowed, right?
It did not overflow. It worked exactly as it's designed.
Oh, well, all right, but,
It worked perfectly.
well, but the guys at Vivala's had a little water in the basement.
Correct.
It was not designed to eliminate flooding in a 500-year storm.
No, that was the difference. I was gonna bring that up.
It's a huge
It's,
difference.
It was built for 100 and we had a 500 year, so, you know.
Correct.
There's no blame,
It
it's
was
just
built above
trying to
standard.
deal with the darn thing, you
Right,
know?
but it's important for people to understand the perspective.
Yep.
They spent millions of dollars to build that
Yeah.
tank.
And it did alleviate, well, that's your.
It did, yeah.
It did a huge job.
It's done what it was intended to do.
Exactly.
I think, there may have been some misconceptions on people's part that it would eliminate flooding.
Nothing eliminates
And
flooding.
nothing will eliminate flooding, particularly not when you have a 500-year storm. But it mitigated flooding in the way it was intended to.
I apologize
Yeah.
for interrupting.
Yep. Well, and speaking of Steve, we've got, coming forward in the next, we have one item on our agenda, coming up here on Monday, and that's opting out of the state required parking standard. They put the standard out and then gave the towns the option to opt out. When you figure this out, folks, let me know.
It was
Because
done, it was done purposely if you speak to the senators and representatives.
You're next, so we'll get you can fill us in. But at any rate, it's on there, and I think I think that will probably pass. It requires a 2/3 vote, but when they put the 2/3 vote in the state mandate, they didn't specify 2/3 of what. It's just like a number out there,
So of
so.
all members or,
I sat with town council, and we will use Robert's Rules of Order and follow that.
So
the
that's
standard.
members present?
Yes.
Thank you.
Members present, yes. And other than that, the next steps for us are the annual meeting, November 8th, and then that brings everybody together, as I explained, and then November 21st, we have the organizational meeting. That's when the committees all meet. The Rules Committee meets, assigns everybody to a committee, and the committees all meet and elect their chairs. And then December 6th is the state of the town. So that finishes out the year for us. So that's the RTM.
Okay, thank you very much, Seth. Steve?
How long do you want me to speak?
Well, what time do you have to leave, John?
Cut
I
me off
need to
anytime.
leave in about 10 minutes.
In 10 minutes. So would you indulge me and let me report a
Sure.
few things
Go right
for,
ahead. Please.
John's benefit, just so he can hear some of this stuff.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm eager for your report. I want to give everybody a COVID update. Things are really, really good in Darien. I know the Board of Ed is doing a great job in managing the schools, but positive cases in Darien are declining significantly. In August, we had 86 cases. In September, we had 49. So great trend. This compares to the peak of 302 cases in January of 2021. We've had a total of 1,723 cases from 1,080 unique households. 100% of cases now are presumed to be the Delta variant. Our weekly positivity rate is wonderful because it's 0.7%, which means we're in a decline. 90.4% of those eligible for vaccine are fully vaccinated in Darien, compared to 64% statewide. and 97.6% have had at least one dose of vaccine. Nearly 100%, when you consider the kids who can't be vaccinated yet. 87 of the 176 cases since July 30th are breakthrough cases. But nobody's getting severely ill. We've had no hospitalizations since March of 2021, and that individual was hospitalized for other issues, but had COVID at the time of hospitalization. The Darian Health Department is preparing for vaccine rollout for kids aged 5 to 11, and hopefully that will be coming soon. Governor's civil preparedness and public health emergencies have been extended until February 15th. Please, I hope that is the last extension. Terry, go Terry.
Yeah, I mean, agreed.
So let's touch on the drainage and flooding issues. FEMA was here on October 6th. They're actually back in town today, going to a whole nother group of affected businesses and homes. I've exchanged communications with Congressman Himes a number of times, and I've asked him to help continue to leverage all channels available to him to help facilitate a federal disaster declaration. We also really need the support of our state delegation, and I've made sure that Terry and Bob and Matt and Patricia have been included in these communications. The town is moving forward to secure the services of FEMA grant experts to assist us with grants and future mitigation projects. Kate and I have been working on that, having conversations with some tremendous professionals in the consultancy world, and hopefully we'll be prepared soon to bring a recommendation to engage to the Board of Selectmen. I think the town's going to have a big decision to make in terms of our infrastructure. To what level do we want to build infrastructure? It varies across the board. DOT builds to a certain standard, 25 years, in some cases 50 years in other cases. Our storm drain system is built to a certain level. I don't know that we can build to a 200-year storm level or a 500-year storm level. There wouldn't be a whole lot of homes or businesses left in Darien were we to do that. So we have to come to a reasonable agreement to the standard to which we need to build, work toward that, and understand that there are going to be events that will be far more impactful than that, and homes and businesses may flood. And that's a really hard message to hear, but that is unfortunately the truth. And to John's good point, Craig Flaherty, put a fine point on that in that presentation. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that presentation, I highly recommend it. Trees. The Eversource has appealed the Darien Tree Warden's ruling on the removal of the trees on Little Brook Road. That appeal goes to Pura. More than likely, there will be a mediation that will occur between Eversource and the town, but there is the possibility that it will go to a further process for adjudication. We don't have any information yet about when that mediation will begin. We touched on all things about kindness and community. An interesting fact I wanted to share publicly that was shared with me yesterday. I don't think I ever knew this, but in the interest of supporting the idea that Darien really is a welcoming and inclusive community, the Spring Grove Cemetery was the very first integrated veteran cemetery in the United States. And I think that that really speaks volumes not only to how much we value our veterans, but the fact that we have always been an inclusive community in spite of what you might read in the headlines. And last, and thank you for staying for this, I just want to say thank you to all of you so much for all of your dedication and hard work. 12 years for me, but this group in particular, you guys are the thought leaders of the town, and I'm counting on you to keep that going. And I'll try not to cry like I did yesterday for the department heads meeting.
We've done so much, but gosh, there's so much more to do. I have a whole list that I'm actually gonna pass on to all of you. Things that need to get done. So thank you for continuing the teamwork, for this collaboration. We've moved mountains in the last year or two with, bringing the town and the Board of Ed together. Great. And I wish you all the very best.
Thank you.
Happiness
Thank you.
and hard work.
You wanna go next?
Yeah. To thank you, we have a little something simple for you to hang somewhere. Here, Judy, if you would help me with this.
Oh, my gosh.
So it's signed from all of us.
That's really very special.
Why don't you go in front of it, Jamie?
Little sentiments,
Yeah,
yes.
That's awesome.
Well, you've been a remarkable leader, and we're so
Thank you.
grateful.
I can't wait to read it.
I guess we can all get in.
Come on in.
John, go ahead and get
John, come on
take the
in.
picture.
We'll Seth,
Seth.
John.
Get over here.
This is so fun.
Come on in, Steve.
Go up with Chris, Seth, too.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, sir. You go first, you.
There we go. Awesome.
I think
We're good.
I think we're good.
Awesome.
Thank you all very much. Thank you all very much. And I promise I won't,
Yeah.
I won't text or email you in the heat of your meeting moments while I'm watching TV 79.
But it could be right
Yeah,
there.
right. That'll be the.
It could be right before or right after.
Exactly. And thank you, John. I know we'll be in touch. The last thing I wanted to say is about the ARPA committee. We have seated the committee with the exception of a chamber member. There may be 2 chamber members that are interested in serving, so the Board of Selectmen will discuss that, and we will seat chamber member or members at our next meeting, and then we will be off and running with an organizational meeting. And we will have strong support from CCM and WestCog, who have personnel who will assist us as needed.
Oh, very nice.
I was at the chamber meeting last night, and it was just a whole bunch of smiley faces and people hugging each other like they hadn't seen each other in like 24 months or so. So it was quite a gathering.
Terrific.
All right, see you over
Thank you,
later.
John.
This is my
Yeah,
last-
John.
This is my last meeting as well, so it has been a pleasure. So-
Thank you, John.
Thanks,
Hey,
John.
Julie.
John?
Okay, Terry.
Very quickly. Executive orders you mentioned had been extended till February 15th. We met in special session to do that. The vote was narrow, the margin was narrow. There were a number of Democrats that joined us in opposing the executive orders. We felt the governor already had the power, was empowered to exercise specific executive orders, and didn't need this broad stroke and this heavy hand. So we will, again, if it comes up again, we certainly will be opposing it. Connecticut has managed the virus very well. Our numbers have been good. So I don't think it was, I think it was excessive. Many of us felt that way. Juvenile justice, still being worked on. The car theft situation continues to escalate. There was a very difficult accident up in Farmington where a police officer was pinned between two cars, and severe injuries, and it was a young man who'd stolen the car and was trying to escape. So it needs to be addressed. I know the House and Senate Republicans have both offered ideas and proposals for this, and I know the Democrats are working on something as well, so we just need to get it done. Looking forward to a solution on that. The other thing is related to Channel 79. I just think a shout out to, there are 2 women in town doing a podcast called Now We're Talking Darian, and they've interviewed, I think they've done 20 episodes now. It's available on Spotify, and they just interviewed Jim Cameron of Channel 79 and founding, how he founded that and what his purpose was, and he was so complimentary of Jamie in your saying, well, let's expand it to all the meetings, not just the Board of Selectmen, and honored you for your transparency and holding government accountable, and really how grateful we are to have Channel 79 in Darien. A lot of towns don't. and the amount of time Jim puts into it with love and affection for this community.
Bless you.
Bless you.
Bless you.
You're not sick.
No.
I always
That's
follow
funny.
with not sick. So it's worth listening. The podcast, Now We're Talking Darian, is available on Spotify, I think a couple of other platforms.
I met the lady last night, she was at the chamber meeting.
Taylor or Liz?
Liz, I think.
Liz, yeah, they're dynamos. And
Yeah,
they
she
work
was-
so well together. They complement each other, and they're both intellectually very capable, and they ask questions. They listen and are able to follow up with really good questions. So it's very nuanced and very thoughtful.
It was actually fun because of course, just his accent, but they did one with the superintendent also.
Yes, they did.
To
Oh,
go
yeah.
back and listen to that, it was
Yes.
fun, and a little bit about Alan's history,
Yes.
and he spoke eloquently about coming here and kind of living the American dream as an immigrant from Ireland, in
Yeah.
terms of his education and where he's gotten to, being the superintendent of one of the high-performing districts, not just in the state, but in the country, so it was a neat podcast.
Yeah, all of them have been fascinating, and they're about 45 minutes, so it's a perfect listen if you're doing an errand somewhere, or you're running around town. It's great. So,
I'll just.
And Jamie, this-
I'll layer on to that. One of the reasons why they started the podcast was for some of the things that we've already discussed
Mhm.
today. You know, tired of hearing about things in sound bites on social media. They wanted to dig deeper, get to really know people, sit down with them and have a real conversation to really understand, you know, what people are all about. And some of the podcasts are fascinating.
Yeah, they are.
Darian Butcher Shop and
yeah.
police leadership have been in, so
Sugar
highly
Bowl.
recommend. Now We're Talking
Sugar
Darian,
Bowl.
Google it, it's awesome.
Yeah, very, very
Yeah.
good. That's the end of, we start session February 9th, so it's a little slow now because everyone's involved in, even though we are not up for reelection, everyone's involved in their municipal elections, so it's a little bit slow right now in Hartford, but certainly we'll have an eye on next session.
Thank you, Terry.
That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Steve?
Can I ask some questions?
Sure.
The executive order is two things. One is our meetings are now allowed to be virtual via the executive order. Our P&Z meetings, what I'm sort of specific. Does that expire at some point in time? And then the second question is the outdoor dining. We still have outdoor dining in town because of executive order. We aligned our zoning approval to allow temporary outdoor dining to match up with the executive orders. So does that have a sunset date yet?
No.
I thought outdoor dining was codified as.
Yeah, I think it-
I believe, we'll check into that, but
I think Darien codified it, and we codified it.
I believe the legislature will now allow outdoor dining in perpetuity.
Right.
Okay,
At the
there's two things. We have,
discretion.
for specifically one like Rory's, we have to figure out what they're gonna do, because they have outdoor dining, and it really affects their parking.
Yeah.
And same with the new pizza place, Nino's, which is near there. And then you have to figure out something out with the Goose and Bodega.
I have ideas.
I figured you did. That's why you said what you said.
Time is ticking. We gotta talk about that.
Well, you had time for today or time for November 2nd or whatever the date is?
No.
So you ready for my report?
Absolutely.
You can cut me off whenever you want to,
No.
because I'll probably talk too long. What was the first thing? Okay, just get right into it. We have the opt-out provision that Seth spoke about. It's the opt-out for parking. Darien passed a parking regulation and changed it from what it was since 1959 to what it is today, about 6 months ago. So we raised our parking after extensive study of what it is in our peer towns, had experts come in. We had my own personal thing. I work in commercial real estate and develop and work on projects with brand new development apartment buildings every single day. In Stanford, Norwalk, Westchester, White Plains, all of the towns. With that said, I don't think Darien's parking regulations has to match the same as Stanford and Norwalk and Bridgeport. I also am a big person of local control. We know it's best for our town. So Tuesday night, the P&Z Commission unanimously approved us to opt out of the parking requirement. Last night, the PZ&H Committee unanimously approved the town of Darien to opt out of the parking requirement by the state. I'd like to see if the first selectman or the board of selectmen wanted to chime in before Monday night's vote for there. You're an ex officio member, you can speak on your own, or you can speak as a selectman, as a board of selectmen as a whole, if you want to, it's up to you.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Very
I would
good.
plan on going to that meeting myself. With that said, and relative to what Seth mentioned before, we had a public hearing on parking and on these bills back in, what was it, last year, maybe February, March?
March.
Something like that, March?
March, there were 2 public hearings on the vast majority of bills in March.
Yeah.
March 25th was one of the dates, and a couple weeks before that.
So at the P&Z had that public hearing, we invited Ms. Terry Wood, Matt Blumenthal, Bob Duff, and Patricia Billy Miller. They explained some of those bills before they did. I remember in specific, Matt Blumenthal, who was a representative for Stanford and Darien.
District 3, yeah.
He was very, very excited about the opt-out provision in these bills. And the reason why he kind of sort of supported it, and correct me if I'm wrong, you can watch the tape, he wanted the opt-out provisions in it and was satisfied with it because it gives towns local control over very, very important items, which are parking, which are ADUs, and some of the other items in there. So they were specifically put in the bills for towns like us to opt out. That's why they were in there. It's really important to me, and I would strongly urge the RTM to unanimously approve this when they have their meeting on Tuesday. The next item, 3 Parklands Drive is an existing, it's a 20,000 square foot office building in Parklands next to the new assisted living building, which is 101 units, called Selleck Woods. They have a proposal coming in for a second time to do a public hearing on October 19th. The idea is to either knock down that building and start from scratch, or they're gonna gut renovate that building, take it down to steel, and expand it to 59 or 60 residential apartment units, of which 12% of those will be affordable units.
12 or 14?
12.
Oh.
They got it in under the wire.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Our opt-out provision for parking, we lined it up all the same, was October 1st. So if you got your application in September 30th, you're allowed to have 12% affordable housing, and you have to have the higher parking number.
I see.
If you went in after October 1st, you would have the higher affordable housing component and the lower parking number. So they opted to have more parking and less affordable housing, which is fine. That project, if it gets approved, will also continue to diversify our housing in Darien.
Continue what?
To diversify our housing, multifamily housing in Darien. We changed the zoning code about, again, 6 months ago to allow, I'm gonna call them obsolete office buildings that are suburban office buildings to be converted to multifamily housing. I've talked about this a number of different times. That happens all over the country, all over the state, all over the region. Everybody's doing it because most office buildings have to be state-of-the-art, first class in downtown districts, such as Darien or the Corbin district, and the ones that are outliers. One of the worst parts in our area is North Stanford. If you go up to the strip that's along Long Ridge Road or High Ridge Road, between downtown or Lord and Taylor's and the Merritt Parkway, those office buildings nobody wants to work there. Moving on, the next item on my list is the Norotan Heights Shopping Center. The Norotan Heights Shopping Center is going to the ARB on the 19th of this month. They're gonna come to the Planning and Zoning Commission on my mother's birthday, which is October 26th. And they're gonna present their new plans. I successfully asked the developer or their partners to screen the front of the project with what I call windscreens along Heights Road. It is now up. Part of the project is covered, so you can't see it. I'm working on the other side, which faces Palmer's, and the other side, which faces Heights Road, but I'm not done yet. Their new plan, they have a new plan, they want to tweak it. I think the plans are in, I've not studied them yet, they're in the P&Z office. But there's gonna be some kind of parking deck there to facilitate more or move around of the parking. And they also have a new anchor tenant that they're gonna announce. I think I've said this statement a couple different times in the past, it's very, very hard to get commercial construction financing if you do not have an anchor tenant on a quasi-mixed use project, which is residential and commercial. It's basically impossible, to be honest with you. With that, there was, I want to relate to that for something else. Okay, I forgot. I'll remember it. The next item that is on my list,
How many housing units are gonna be in the Palmer development?
59.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And 59 in Selleck, if it goes through.
Correct.
And 12% of each of those projects will be.
For yes. Again, the 12%, we are above the state law, which is 10%. It was 12%, and now we just moved it to 14% to further diversify our housing in town.
Steve, is the Norotan Heights Shopping Center considered a new application or an amendment?
It's an amended application.
Thanks.
That's amended. They also got theirs in below the October 1st deadline to change it. There was something else related to that I wanted to mention. I hope I remember.
Does that correspond, and I don't know, Jamie, it might be still a conversation, is there anything tied into what the state was talking about in terms of the availability to develop train stations and put retail in train stations and develop their properties at the state level?
That's a separate matter, and
Yeah.
it is still, I
Still
guarantee
going
you,
on.
still on the table.
Got it.
Oh,
Good.
yeah, it was in the
Yeah.
legislation.
Okay.
We already did that with the depot. We have the depot, that's a
Yeah,
train
right.
station.
Nice
Right?
There you go. Thank you.
Keep moving. BMW is the next one that we approved last year. BMW applied for their demolition permit. Their first step of their project is to do all the screening on the backside for landscaping. That's between their new building that's gonna be built and the Middlesex Commons. Their next phase of that is to build a new car wash. So you can get your car wash in when you go in and out. After the car wash is built, then they can tear down the other building.
Wait, as part of BMW, they're building a car wash?
There's an existing car wash at BMW today. It's the same
It's
as it.
just for people who buy.
Correct.
Okay.
If you go by, you know where the Texaco gas station is, or the Shell gas station, there's that car wash where you drive your car in.
Right.
Yes.
And the car doesn't move, but the stuff moves.
Right.
BMW and most luxury car dealerships have something like that.
Interesting.
BMW has it today. They have to build a new building, which is gonna be able to do that. And then they're gonna take out the old car wash and knock down that whole building. So they're moving forward. I think they got their demo permit a couple of weeks ago. The next item on my list is the Federal project. Federal has topped out their building on the backside, which is on the West Avenue side. I am pleasantly pleased that it is tall, but it's not as tall as I thought it might have been. They did have a lot of supply chain issues in and of themselves, getting lumber and wood and trusses. That's why they also lost a month, similar to what Mr. Zagrodsky said about Oxford School, and you said about Oxford School. I'm not gonna say that they're behind schedule, because I think they catch up quick. They did not actually, they have anchor tenants, and they did announce their tenants recently, which their tenants that they announced, they have a high-end coffee shop that's from Fairfield, a high-end ice cream store that's also from Fairfield. They have a pizza parlor that's gonna be a high-end pizza parlor. I was advocating for a pizza parlor that's in their project out in California, in San Jose, called Antigua Pizza, that my daughter goes to, but they got a different pizza parlor here, so I guess I didn't get what I wanted. They also have a nail salon, which is gonna be, I think it's called Gel Nails. I don't know much about nail salons, but there's a nail
Well, it's a
salon.
membership-based salon.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think that's
Interesting.
what I read.
They-
Okay.
They made Mrs. O'Leary very happy with pizza and ice cream.
There you go.
Pizza, ice cream, coffee,
You can
but
walk
ice
there.
cream, yeah, absolutely.
The stairs, one of the things, if you remember, I think I said, I know I said it before, I don't know if I was at this meeting, because I missed my last one. The stairs over the top from the front of the project, which is really Heights Road, to West Avenue, which is between the existing building, it's under construction of Walgreens, is supposed to be finished soon. I'm really pressing them to open it up, so I can get people to be able to walk over the hill. They're waiting for the railing that comes to separate the two sides, so it's ADA compliant, and get the lights in.
I will tell you, I drove by there kind of slowly the other day, and I'm impressed by the landscaping that
Yeah.
they've done. I mean, everything from crepe myrtle to some decent sized spruce and flowering trees. I was impressed by the
Yeah,
landscape.
that's the next thing on my list.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Oh, Jerry,
My thing, I love
Jamie has
landscaping.
me on the clock, so I'm trying to do it first. The landscaping is set on the backside. The parking deck, which is on top of Walgreens, is basically finished. They're using that for construction truck parking now and the white vans. So you go there during the day. It's not open to the public. The general public really doesn't need it. But they have a lot of stuff there. We also had to adjust their zoning approval. They really wanted, and their proposed tenants wanted outdoor seating for other restaurants. So we had to move some of the common area space, or the open space around, and give them the flexibility if they want to put in a pizza parlor, they have outdoor seating and whatnot. This is what I was thinking about earlier. Relative to the parking that we spoke about a little bit ago, the parking regulations for the state is really only for 100% multifamily housing projects. Darien really in actuality only has about 3 of them. One is Avalon, one is The Heights, one is Royal, and the other one's Garden Homes. Mixed use projects such as Palmer's, Corbin, and Federal do not fall underneath the state statute the way it's written, because that's a mixed use project with shared parking. So whether we change it or don't change it, nothing happens to those guys. Most residential projects today are mixed use. So this regulation that the state came up with is very narrow. And I don't really see something like that affecting anything in our town again.
Well, it speaks again to local control.
Correct, 100%. Yeah, 100%. The one thing that we're also trying to do with Federal is they came into us, I think, 2 or 3 times in the last 6 months to get stuff moving. We're really trying to cut the red tape for them. We've granted Jeremy Ginsburg a lot of administrative authority to approve things. Their windows, just for example, for their building, is a 6-week turnaround time. 16-week turnaround time. So if they have to change the windows or change volumes or change colors, and the town doesn't have a meeting or we hold them up, they're losing weeks and months every single time. And the windows don't come in. The last thing you want is to have, a building and to wait for the windows, because they haven't come in yet. We already had those problems with that. So we're trying to do the right thing and cut the red tape. And that's what we're really after. Next item up is, we had a meeting last night, or let me get the broader picture. The Corbin District is a hole in the ground right now. Phase 1 is basically, I'm gonna call it phase 1, because I think it is phase 1, but there's other phase A, B, and C. Is basically a hole in the ground. That is where the gas station was, next to Gopher Ice Cream, going all the way back to Old Kings Highway. There's gonna be 3 buildings built there. It's all been remediated, it's all been ready to go. They're moving off to the races. You're gonna see some concrete coming out of there in short order. I've heard no issues at all from anybody relative to traffic and parking and congestion and any of that stuff. I think they're doing a great job with construction management.
Yeah.
If anything does come back that from anybody else in town who will use it, please let me know, and we'll reach out to the developer. And I know you have a direct line to them also, so.
I think it helped the barrier, they clarified the barriers in the parking there. People were parking all the way down in front of the construction, and now there's new barriers, there's, what do you call it, the caution barriers. I drove around there the other day, and it was actually much better.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were still those cars hanging out. Yeah.
They did the same, Corbin did the same exact thing that Federal's doing, where they created the other parking lot, which I call it Dina's Tent parking lot, that's behind Helen Hansen. There's a
Yeah.
huge parking lot there where the construction vans and the white vans can park. So they don't have a whole lot of issues there. Last Tuesday night, we also saw the East Lane project come out, which is their affordable housing component. The developer built 2 buildings that look like houses that are nicer than mine. Sorry, Emily. 2 beautiful houses that are there. They sit about, it's over an acre of land. I think it's an acre and a half of land. The houses are designed for, they have 6 studio apartments in each of them. Were built as affordable housing for, and I'm going to say the word I've said it 1,000 times, special needs people that are adults.
Developmentally disabled.
It's in, if you want to get technical, the zoning code says intellectually disabled,
Okay.
is what it says in the code. They want to switch it to developmentally disabled. So that's what the meeting was the other night. Me personally, I don't know the difference between the 2. I personally, it's my own opinion, I don't really care the difference between the 2. I know it's for disabled people that have special needs. That's
There's a-
what it was designed for. That was
There's a
approval.
state support, sorry to butt in,
Sure.
there's a state support designation based, if I understand this correctly, based on an IQ threshold.
Right.
That makes the difference between those two populations, so.
I think you're 100% spot on. The plan that they put forth the other night was to switch from the state statute to the federal statute. That's what it's gonna go. And they have some people that in the building are, the youngest one, I think, that applied, that may be on the short list of acceptance, is a graduate of Darian High School class of 2018. So she's 22 years old. She would have graduated with my daughter. And the oldest one, I think the woman said, is she's 45 years old. And they all applied. They got over somewhere between 50 or 60 applications of people to come in into the project. It is the ableist who's the, I would call it the manager or the administrator of the building. It was their job to whittle it down from 60 down to what eventually the number's gonna be 10, 11, or 12. You need a professional to look at that, to know who can go in there, who can qualify, both on the emotional side, I'll say, and also on the financial side. Because I know from personal understanding, two people that have two different disabilities, sometimes they don't gel. And I know for a personal reason, for a fact, and you wouldn't really want to put those two people in the same facility. So that is, we closed the hearing last night. We'll debate it I think on Tuesday or maybe a week later. They have not applied for their certificate of occupancy yet. They're ready to go. I think there's some punch list items that they have to do. So they're gonna apply for their certificate of occupancy either this week or next week. And when they do that, they have to submit who their residents will be, effectively called a rent roll. So that all might be delayed because we have not approved the zoning text amendment change yet or even debated it. But that's really, really, really close. I'd like to see those people in there before Thanksgiving.
It's an incredible project.
Yeah.
David Genovese needs a round of applause for what he's done.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
And
Very much
for
so.
full disclosure, Jamie, Terry Wood, myself, the planning zoning assistant director, or associate director, I think is his title, toured it with other people and developer in August, on a nice hot day of the year. It's a beautiful facility. And they also went above and beyond. They put elevators in there, which they weren't supposed to. It has, and also has a room where it is basically an office, I'll call it a hangout room for the people that live there. A person can sleep overnight there, a staff person, or it can just be for people. That's that one. The next item that I have on my list, we had a pre-meeting with an applicant that wants to change a vacant office building. It's a suburban office building in town over on Tokenique Road by the deli that's over there, to convert it into a Montessori school. I think my nephew went to a Montessori school in Chicago. I think it's a great idea. I forget the age bracket it goes from, if it's like, 3 to 12 or what the dates were. But that's gonna require a review of the zoning code again. I think that's something that the town is clamoring for, which is more, I wanna say private pay, educational opportunities for, what do you guys call it? K to 3 or 3K, the ELP stuff?
Pre-K,
Yeah.
ELP, early learning programs.
Yeah, I think it's something to that, so you can have competition from another school if it gets approved. But I think that's a great use of a building, if they can get in there. In my course of business, I've done a bunch of these all over Westchester County and also Fairfield County. The Goddard School is another one that is expanding at leaps and bounds in our area. And most of those schools have 100% occupancy, and they do a great job. With two income earners and families, and people having to drop off their kids, my wife and I both work. I think you and your wife also both work.
Yeah.
I don't know what you do with a 4-year-old, these days. You have to drop them off someplace. So that's something that's important to us, and that's gonna be, I'm not sure the date that's on the next agenda. The next thing that's on my list is Mr. Vaccaro is gonna finish his building that's over at Norotan in the Heights, I think it's the Heights, that's next to the Norotan, the Heights Fire Station.
Oh, that's in Norotan.
That's in
Not
Norotan, right? I'm in the
so
Heights.
It's the Norotan section of
The
Norotan.
Norotan, I'm sorry about that, Norotan people.
He's in planning and zoning.
It's all Darian to me. That building should be ready to open in December. It's gonna have 1 or 2 ground floor retail residents, I think 4 apartments above and affordable unit, also in the building. So that's another affordable housing project we have in town.
Did a nice job.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really looks good.
How many units? 4?
5
plus-
in total.
5 in total, right.
So it's, because, and we can call them affordable housing units in New York, but if you look into an apartment and you look at an affordable unit and you look at a market unit, they're dead on the same. There's no difference. But one of the tenants has to be affordable, and that also, that lands up being, we said a second ago that the state statute is 10%, Darian is 12%, we moved it to 14%, that building is 20% affordable. Simple math.
We've done very well with that. I mean, Alan O'Neill sits there today and looks great. I mean,
Okay, which is great. It does.
I mean, this town has done some great stuff.
And we try to keep going. The next item that's on my list is the flooding. I did attend the flooding meeting that was at, that the Board of Selectmen held, and listened to everything. When I was on the meeting, I did make sure because of my business, I have access to flood maps online. So if you give me your address, I can check to see if you're in a flood zone in real time. The flood zone maps in Darien were done in 2013, the last time they were rewritten. It's a FEMA project, so if you're speaking to those FEMA people, and I try to put feelers out there, I'd love them to update our maps sooner than every 10 years. It's gonna give us.
It's very controversial, you know.
Yeah, I know it is, but it's a fact of life. Either you wanna know you're in a flood zone, or you don't wanna know you're in a flood zone. You know, some people that are in flood zones wanna get out of a flood zone, and that's their prerogative. You know, but I'd rather have people know that their house is in a flood zone. And there's certain people, and your wife is a realtor.
Yeah.
You have to decide a disclosure when you buy a house. And since you know that you're in a flood zone, is your house ever flooded? If they signed a disclosure that said they're in a flood zone, they know it, you know, that's where the house was a
We will
different price.
post those, we already have posted the tools online, so if somebody wants to check and see if their house is in a flood zone.
Did you or Jeremy check to see if my thing is a free service from FEMA?
The flood zone, if you use MapGeo, the flood zone maps it's one of the options you can choose when you go into MapGeo. You can put the flood zone map overlay on it.
Does it come from FEMA? It doesn't say 2013?
I have to check on the dates, but I'm gonna assume it's up to date.
Okay, I'll check my house to see
Yeah.
if my house is in there.
I think since it comes from planning, you know.
It's just, the one that CBRE Group Inc. subscribes to is the most latest and greatest directly from FEMA. I know the MapGeo, which is for the Westcog and all those things are together. It's in real time, so it's really close. But I've had a discussion with a couple of brokers who say, oh, my thing got updated in 2018. I'm like, no, it didn't, because the feds didn't do it in 2018.
We can look into that, and if the town needs to have an enhanced, more up-to-date service, we can do that, but.
That would be great.
Trying to.
With that said.
I'm gonna have to leave fairly
Okay.
soon.
With that said, I'm also trying to set up a meeting with the principals and CEO and number 2 man for Erstad Biddle. I just spoke to them last week. We were supposed to have a meeting last week, but I actually had to postpone it. Erstad Biddle building, I didn't know this until this whole thing happened, is 100% in a flood zone. The whole building is in a flood zone. That
Where?
was news to me.
Good vibes.
Good vibes shopping center?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So, the CEO, Win
Oh,
Biddle,
yeah,
wants to
right.
speak to me. And his right-hand man, also wants to speak to me about this. When it gets set up, I'll give you the date.
Great.
And so I'm gonna go directly to the source since he's the building that did this.
Stop and Shop was down. Just like-
Right. In August, we did a walk to downtown Darien to talk about sidewalks. I have this plan in my head to fix the sidewalks in town that are on the Grove Street side and wrap them. A lot of the land over there is private, so we have to play in with the landowners too. I also spoke to Jamie Stevens, who was at one of our tours on a nice August day. We might have to kind of figure out when you guys are doing budgets, because my committee has no money. If you guys can give us some more money for sidewalks, I'd
Well,
appreciate
we're out
that.
there pleading for money ourselves.
Well, sidewalks aren't, your department's,
Everything's my purview.
yeah.
I also did speak to Ed Gentile at Jamie's request relative to cost to build a sidewalk. For some reason, Ed Gentile can do sidewalks a lot cheaper than third-party people. I'm not trying to spend the town's money. I'm trying to get the people that own the land to do the sidewalks on their own property, because we can make people do model block when they come in for zoning approvals. I think I'm getting close to the end. I also do want to get back to in-person meetings for our committee after the elections. Some people do want it. I see that Kate Bush and company and Jim Cameron have our TVs going on in here. If we can figure out a hybrid thing, the way they do it in Norwalk, that would be great too. Because I knew some of the applicants do come from out of state or out of town. And they can present on the TV monitor, that would be fantastic. I will also read the committee statement at our next P&Z meeting, if I remember. I'll make sure that it reminds me. We did have a lawsuit in Darien, which was really not a lawsuit, but we had a decision appealed at 77 Leroy that dates back to 2016, where the new major owner investor appealed one of our zoning decisions. We won that case. The appeal was thrown out by the judge, and the judge ruled in favor of us. If you remember, that is an 830G project. Yes, it's called 16 Pemberton, 77 Leroy. It was originally approved and proposed by the Stefanoni family. And the judge ruled in our favor and threw the 10 out, so that one's gone. And the last but not least, most important thing that's on my list tonight is thank you to Jamie Stevenson. I've been coming to these meetings since I was vice chairman with Susan Cameron, and that's at least 6 years ago or 5 years ago. You're a very elegant woman. I appreciate you for giving me the opportunity to speak. You always said that you love my speeches. You're a fantastic leader. She does. She gives me a compliment.
Oh, compliment.
You're a fantastic leader, very generous with your time. I want to miss you. You know, I really can't thank you enough.
Thank you, that's very nice. I'm always around, and you know, as I like to tell my husband often, I've got now what will be in short order, this bank of useless knowledge that I have to do something with. So I'm always happy to continue privately sharing thoughts and ideas.
Fantastic. Takes a village.
I'll just add and say thank you. I appreciate your initial reach out once I moved into the chair role, and you know, we've always spoken, but it was so nice to formalize it in both our roles. And I think, you know, establishing a good friendship always has helped, but you've been a true partner and a true leader, and you've been a resource for me to go to in terms of thinking about leadership and different things. And I think pulling together the town leaders like you have done and like this meeting done just helps the overall discussion. And while we're in a difficult place and we have difficult discussions to have, I think you've set the tone and you've set the stage for that. So appreciate all the hard work and just the partnership. You know, you find the time. You literally scheduled weekly calls, whether they were 15 minutes or a half hour. They were never rushed. They were good conversations, and I so appreciate that. I think it set the stage.
Standing ovation.
Yeah.
Listen, there's so much going on in this town.
I know.
You know, there's so much vibrancy that we're so fortunate, and that is as a result of all of you, all of the staff, the hundreds of volunteers that we have. It isn't one person, it's all of us together. So, you know, I just applaud our community for really being a premier community, and you know, in 2 or 3 years, this place is, I mean, it's already hopping, but
Yes.
A lot of wonderful vibrancy, so well done to all of you.
Yeah.
I promise you will.
Well, I would like to add that Jamie and I go back a ways.
Quite a ways.
And at least to when I was the recruiting chair for the Republican Town Committee, there's only 80 slots to fill, different committees throughout the town. They all come through board selection. So working with Jamie as far back as that, and then of course as the moderator, having all of the things that deal with the Board of Selectmen coming through, making sure they're right. It takes a lot of work to make sure that the meetings are set up right, that the resolutions are correct, and that the salient points are covered so that the RTM is informed, and Jamie's commitment to that and support in getting the information out has been outstanding. So you got a lot done,
Thank
a
you.
lot done.
Yeah, we did.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
It's been a good run.
Well, and you've modeled integrity and intelligence and such rational leadership.
Well, don't ask Linda O'Leary about those days. Or Kate, but thank you.
Well, it's been just such a joyful, and I know
Yeah.
you will continue on.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
So grateful.
Thank you all.
Yes.
It's been a privilege of a lifetime.
Yeah.
So with that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Thank you, Steve. May I have a
I'll
second?
second.
Thank you, Seth. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jamie.